Okay, I believe we are live. So, welcome to Tamarah's Closet today. I'm very, very excited to have a very special guest with me today. He is just as nice as he is talented. And I actually discovered this man. I was actually walking my dogs through a local park here last year, and I kind of landed in the middle of a movie set, and I could tell by the props and things that it looked like it was going to be a horror film, which I love. And I spoke with some of the people on the set, and I was asking them about it, and they told me about. I said I want to interview somebody, and they told me about the lead actor and told me what a great guy he is, and they said you should interview Michael. And so they told me how to get in touch with him. I did, and finally, after quite about a year now, he's with me today. And I'm very excited about that. He has been working in independent film since 2006 when he debuted his improvisational skills in Move Carey. He's played a variety of roles and specializing in indie horror. He is also not a stranger to the stage, appearing in many theatrical performances, which we will talk about today. And I actually had a chance to work with him, photographing him in my studio, my old studio last year. And he is such a joy to work with, and he has so many different talents. He's directing, he's a teacher also as well. He builds props, he deals with lighting. So I really want to go ahead and bring out this multi-talented man with me. Welcome Michael Ray Williams to Tamarah's Closet.
Hi, Tamarah.
So I really am excited to have you today. I just thought it wasn't ever going to happen, Michael. So
it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, and I am thrilled that you're here. And I really did enjoy that photo shoot with you and the one with your wife Margaret. So it's great to finally get to the interview today.
I'm happy to be here.
I want to jump right into a little bit about your background and your past growing up. I always like to do that, sort of to show people that, sometimes we don't take the same path as our parents, or maybe our parents were great at something and weren't great at something we want to do doesn't mean we can't do it. So I wanted to kind of know a little bit about how old you were when you were a kid. Did you show interest in acting? Did you play make believe or?
Well, yes, make believe was probably my favorite game. We grew up where I grew up was very wooded. I spent a lot of time outside. I did have an older brother, but he was very into sports, so we didn't play together very much. And then when my little sister was born, we would go out in the yard and play a lot. I have very vague memories of being in elementary school and doing some little kid shows in elementary school around Christmas time, maybe. It's very foggy at this point. But yes, I loved playing pretend, and I think I was probably about, maybe 7 or 8 when I started to make the connections, watching somebody on the screen and figuring out that was their job, that they get paid to do that this is not real life. And then over the, I'd say probably up until I was maybe 13 or 14, I started to ruminate on it more. And then once I became a teenager, then that was pretty much what I decided I wanted to do.
Great. Well, when you were little like that and playing out and playing make believe, and did your parents notice that you were very creative?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My household was a pretty artistic household. My mother was a choir director, and when she was in high school, she did theater. And my father was an illustrator and a painter. So it was a just very creative minded. My dad is a little more pragmatic than my mom, but they still both have a very strong appreciation for the arts in general. I always joke that I learned how to draw before I learned how to walk, because my dad he taught me how to do calligraphy when I was 7 years old, and taught me how to paint with oils instead of watercolors, and and as I got older and took more of an interest in it, I was in band in middle school and up into high school, and they were both very supportive of that. And then I started doing theater, and they were both very supportive of that. I think my dad probably worried a little bit about the economic stability of being an actor.
I know.
Professionally unemployed, right? But
Yeah.
I think it was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago now. He had come to see me in a show, and we were hanging out after the show talking, and that was at that point he like said the phrase specifically that I think this is what you were meant to be doing. So they have both. Yes, both my parents were very, very supportive of it, and my creativity probably got me in trouble more often than not when I was growing up. But I'm using it to my advantage nowadays.
Well, that's great. That's great. So, do you paint anymore today, or?
I do, not as much as I used to. One of those, the problem with getting older is, sometimes our bodies don't like us to do the things we want to do all the time. And so, and I have carpal tunnels, and so it's hard for me to sit and draw to the extent that I used to. But I do. I even started dabbling in digital drawing and digital painting. Got a digital art pad a couple of years ago to help with a project that my wife was doing. I have been doing more sculpting over this last year, working with clay, and I would like to paint more, but sometimes I also find like I'm harder to satisfy now that I'm older, and
Right.
I'm more critical of myself now that I'm older. So I will 9 times out of 10 talk myself out of doing an art project for silly reasons, really. But I do try to get it in when I can.
Well, we're all our own worst critic, and so that's a big challenge for a lot of artists, I believe. I know it's one of my biggest challenges, But when you did a lot of acting in high school, what different types of? Because at one point you became interested in horror.
So growing up, my dad again, I don't know if I'm remembering it correctly or if I'm imbuing my memory with my own bias, but he likes horror movies, and a horror movie was the first movie that I watched, and then years later made the connections that it was somebody's job. So my favorite horror movie to this day, and it was the first one that I saw that really that made a really significant impact, was Ridley Scott's original Alien. It's my absolute favorite movie. I saw it when I was probably 8, so I was definitely too young to have seen it. Yeah. But we would go on vacation every spring to the beach, and when we went on vacation, it was always great because the hotel we stayed in had cable. And one night we were on vacation, and my dad had turned on HBO, and he had fallen asleep, and I was still awake on the little cot that I was sleeping in the hotel room. And Alien came on, and I was wide awake, and I just sort of curled up in my blanket and watched this movie. And it was terrifying. It scared me for years. I had nightmares for years about that movie. And then I maybe about 11 or 12, and I had gone to a used bookstore called Edward McKay's, and I found a Alien companion book that was just a making of, essentially, with all of these high color full color pictures and chapters on all of the different actors and the production. Hold on one sec. I'm pulling something up just so I don't misspeak. But I started thumbing through this book, and when I came upon the chapter in the book about Balaji Badejo, the actor who was cast as the alien, the monster, I saw these pictures of him in the suit, and then it dawned, like, again, it was like the lights flicking on, like, wait a minute, that's a person, and that's his job, and he gets paid money to run around in an alien costume, and it was just like, that was just the coolest thing to me. So it was really that movie and a handful of other horror movies, and starting to understand the work that went into them, and the fact that these people essentially get to they make a living playing pretend, was when I started to formulate my interest in acting. And I just liked horror movies. I like other movies, don't get me wrong. But something about, horror movies they're usually the best combination of drama and comedy. And the essence of drama and comedy is the same. It's all about the subversion of expectations. And horror movies tap into that, I think, really, really well. And even bad horror movies are still fun. They're still entertaining,
Yeah.
And you can't really say that about other genres, I don't think,
No.
So it was yeah. Watching them growing up definitely influenced my interest in them. And the older I got, the more interested I got, and then when I was finally old enough to start like going and renting or buying my own movies, I remember when Blockbuster was still a thing. And yeah, and I would go and they would do these like 5 movies for $20. And so I would just go through the bin and pick out 5 of the most random horror movies. And I've got a ridiculous collection of DVDs. But yeah, just as I got older, I learned to appreciate it more. I learned to appreciate it as an art form. It's fun scaring people, and tapping into that level of emotion. It's very satisfying.
Right. Now you're too young to remember, but because you're an actor, you may have seen them on DVDs or something later if they are. But when I was growing up and we, went trick-or-treating, when we'd get back, that we watched all the old, and I'm guessing they would maybe been from my mother's era, but the old black and white, like the werewolf and the vampire.
The Universal horror movies.
Yeah, I guess they're old. They're really old, and back then there weren't. You didn't see a lot of blood or anything, but they were still scary.
So the original Dracula is one of my favorites for 2 reasons. I mean, one is Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi is just so engrossing watching him perform. But the second reason is the way that they shot these movies, those old movies. It was like theater, because that's what they knew. All of the people who came into the film industry during the Silver Age of film were all theater people. They were using big theater lights, and they were building the film sets on theatrical stages. And Dracula in particular is great because it's also a stage play. So I think I was in middle school, maybe. Again, memory. I can memorize a script in 3 days, but details about my growing up and deer in the headlights. But I think I was in middle school, and it was around Halloween. Our English teacher had gotten sick and had to miss school for a chunk of time, and the substitute that we got permission to play all of the Universal horror movies for us in class. So we watched the original Frankenstein, the original Dracula, the original Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Bride of Frankenstein, The Mummy, and The Invisible Man over the course of about 2 weeks. And I love that stuff. I grew up watching The Munsters with my grandparents. It was one of their favorite shows. And the original Twilight Zone is still entertaining to me. I always had friends who were older than me, and I think that in a way that kind of helped me cultivate a really firm appreciation of like classical cinema, and classical TV. And there are some movies, the original Night of the Living Dead and the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I think are still fantastic films. I mean, Night of the Living Dead sparked the entire zombie genre pretty much.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, well, I love those old movies, of my mother's time. I still, if they come on some old channel, I'll watch them, but it's just a whole different thing back then. But do you consider yourself a shy person? Like,
So what's that trend? There was a trend a while back where people were posting that they were extroverted introverts or introverted extroverts, something like that. An ambivert, I think is the word, maybe. I have pretty bad social anxiety. It actually has gotten more, not necessarily worse. Worse isn't the word I would want to use, but it has gotten more significant as I've gotten older. Like I all of a sudden more aware of it and more aware of, when I found myself in certain social situations that I was putting on these masks to make myself comfortable being there. I was very, very, when I was younger, I would have described myself as shy. I was very shy and very soft spoken. And it was really getting into theater in high school that kind of, I don't think the shyness ever went away. I just learned to control it better, I think. And as I got older, the anxiety that I would feel, because I still get nervous going to auditions. I still get nervous opening night of a show. I still get nervous on a film set, which is a whole different kind of animal. There are so many people behind the camera that the audience never sees. But I have figured out, I'm a big fan of meditation and mind over matter kind of thing. And so learning to take that anxiety that comes from being in front of an audience, that comes from that shyness, and transforming it into like a kinetic energy, something that I can use to move forward and to push myself forward. So I like I said, I don't think I would describe myself as shy. I definitely have shy tendencies sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand. Well, I think a lot of artists can be a little bit of an introvert, whatever. Yeah.
Being in the film scene for as long as I have now, you go to conventions and festivals and you meet a lot of people, and we're all tend to be very like-minded in one way or another. And that is that's one of the reasons that I think Jason and I have gotten on so well over the years and have really become the family that we have, is because we have that in common. It is very common in this industry.
Yeah, it is. So at what point did you make that decision to really seriously pursue acting?
It had to have been like the senior year of high school into the year after I graduated. Nothing else I was doing to make an income, and this is still true today, is anywhere near as satisfying as getting the role, getting the contract, doing the work, performing, and then getting the paycheck. Now, the paycheck is obviously not a requirement for that enjoyment, but that is still just terribly satisfying. I will never again take for granted the moment of being able to make enough money to survive doing something that you love, because that's it's great. I think, I've gone back and forth on it over the years. I went about 4 years and didn't do any kind of performing. I spent that time like reading on acting technique and taking workshops when I had the time, and then eventually got back into theatrical performing, which ultimately led me back into film work. But I would say that I committed myself to it fully probably in my mid to late 20s, is when I started to really spend the bulk of my time at working at it,
Right. Well, when I was younger, I really loved horror movies a lot, and I remember going to that movie Halloween, the very first one, and things like that. And of course, now I watch it and I go, oh, it's not that scary. But,
it's funny how that happens, right?
I know. But today, I like a lot of the old ones like you were talking about, but today it's gotten so graphic with a lot of chopping and hacking and all that stuff. And I don't know if it's as you get older, it's harder to watch that because the closer you get to your, you're like, oh my God. But what I've always wondered, so I'll ask you what you think. What is it you think about people that we like horror?
I mean, there's an endorphin release that comes from that adrenaline surge that you get when you get scared. And the reason I think we like horror movies is because it's a safe space to experience that. Going to haunted houses is an excellent example because it's a safe environment because it's not real. It's a very simplified version of thrill seeking, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's also an emotional catharsis that we get from experiencing the narrative of horror when it's there. Now, this is not the case for all horror movies because some horror movies completely ignore that. But this process of meeting a group of characters or a character that you identify with, seeing the problem that they're faced with, seeing the negative impact that it has on them, watching them go through the process of problem solving, and ultimately culminating in this climax and hopefully their survival, and ultimately some growth. That's satisfying. That's cathartic for the audience. But I think that we like horror movies because it's that safe environment to feel very dynamic, typically unsafe feelings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I agree. I think because I also think sometimes when I watch them, it's almost like it makes you feel very alive all of a sudden when when you're watching someone else. Certainly, we wouldn't want that to happen in real life, but it's like you said, it's safe, and that's why we watch it. Yeah. It's a way to explore fear, I guess, in a safe way, like you said. So, yeah. So, and since Halloween is one of my favorite times of the year.
It's our absolute favorite.
I knew you had to love it. I just love it. So I'm always hoping they'll keep. I'd like to see some of that old horror come back. That's not so. It's still scary, but not quite so. I had a hard time watching that Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, I don't. The pushing now. It's some movies back, classical horror movies. We only really remember the ones that weren't like that. There were a whole bunch of movies made in the 70s to the early 80s that were very bloody and very gory and very gross.
Yeah.
Now, the makeup effects or the budgets made it less believable typically. There were lots of grindhouse style gross movies done back then. They just weren't as popular as the mainstream stuff. I think the reason that movies like Halloween and Friday the 13th have endured the way they have is because they stylized it in such a way that gave it some longevity. Now makeup effects and budgets have gotten way bigger in this day and age, and you can convey really gross, horrible things very realistically now. I'm not a big fan of the overtly gory stuff either. I don't mind it as long as it serves a purpose to the narrative.
Yeah.
I think that some writers and some directors out there just go for that shock value, or some of them want to do it just to see if they can pull it off. And they're always trying to elicit a response. So I can't really begrudge them that.
Right.
I won't ever chastise a director or a writer for wanting to do that kind of work. It's just not my kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. But you've also done a lot of theater work too.
I have. Yes.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that a little bit, but also just right off the bat, do you have a preference in like theater over film? Or
I get asked that question a lot, and I think about it a lot. There are definitely aspects of each of them that I prefer over the other. I think if I step back and look at them as a whole, I don't really have a preference one over the other. With theater, it's a lot of work. I mean, don't get me wrong, film is a lot of work too. But with theater, typically you've got 4 to 6 weeks. You're rehearsing every day or most every day. It's long hours. And with theatrical performance, it's always a little bit bigger than film. It is more physical. It is vocal. You have to be able to project. You have to be able to express well enough that people in the audience can read your face and your body language. So it can be a little more tiring. But there's a catharsis that comes from theater that you don't get with film, or at least that I haven't found yet. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't, because when you're doing a theatrical role, it's as real as it can be. It's happening there in the moment. It's happening in real time. So all of the feelings that I feel are real. Film is very different. You get to film, and you rehearse. I rehearse. But I'm still a big believer in rehearsal. And you'd be surprised the number of independent film sets that is not the case. But I'm a big fan of rehearsal. So you spend time with this character, you spend time with your castmates, and you work on these relationships, and you work on this character, and then it comes time to shoot, and it is not real at all. You can have little moments of reality, but from the time the director says action to the time the director says cut, that's it. Once he says cut, everything drops, and you get pulled out of that reality, because there's 18 to 30 people behind the cameras doing all manner of different jobs. And it's really, I've found it really difficult to kind of live in that character when I'm doing film work. Now, the one good thing about that shines from film over theater is that you get to have it for posterity. With theater, you don't. You spend all this time working together and cultivating these relationships and creating these characters, and then you have your set of performances, and then that's it.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you'll get a taped version of the performance, which the taped version of the performance is never as good as the live version of the performance.
Right.
It just isn't. And so there's a little bit of sadness there in that regard, because there's definitely some shows that I've done over the years that I would love to have a film movie version of, but that's just not the nature of the beast.
Right, yeah. And you have that instant gratification with theater of the audience. You actually feel their response.
Yeah, there's a very kinetic relationship between the audience and the cast. And like I said, that catharsis, you get to experience that, especially if you're like even remotely empathic, you get to experience the catharsis that the audience is experiencing as well. And I don't know of any other place in the world that you can get that.
Right. Yeah, agree. Well, what would you say has been your most challenging role in theater? And in film? You can tell me both.
My most challenging theater role is a kind of a toss up. So one of them from a technique standpoint. A number of years ago, I got cast as Frederick in Pirates of Penzance. Old school Gilbert and Sullivan musical, operatic musical. And at that point in time, I had not invested a ton of work in my vocal ability. I was an okay singer. I felt, I feel confident in saying that at that point. Pirates of Penzance is a musical. There's 27 songs in the musical, and the character I got cast as sings in 21 of those songs. So I was real nervous, and so I worked with my director and my musical director to work on my range a little bit. I started working with a vocal coach, and really spent a lot of time, just singing every day for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And about, I would say it was maybe the week before Tech Week. Tech Week's the week leading up to performances. When you start implementing all the technical aspects of the show. And it was that middle of that week prior to Tech Week. And I was singing one of the songs, and I had gotten my lead in from my co-star, from my scene partner. And then I sang my part oh, false one, you have deceived me. And like my voice hit exactly where it needed to hit. And I felt it and my director like looked at me and had this just shock on her face because my voice, I like the work that I had been doing was starting to pay off. Like I was being able to get the pitches, exactly right. I was being able to sustain them exactly right. My volume was good. My breath control was good. My diction was good. So that one I feel from a technique standpoint has been my most challenging because I spent just so much time working on the vocalization and still trying to remember that I'm playing a character. I have to have facial expressions. I need to, what's this character's physicality? How does he walk here and there? How does he express to the other people in the scene? And memorize a bajillion words. So that one I feel was the most challenging from a technical standpoint. The most challenging from I guess an emotional standpoint maybe was I got cast as Macbeth, and I don't have a specific method of acting of character work that I adhere to for everything. I used to be a chef, so I look at my character works like I'm cooking a meal. I want to have lots of ingredients. I want to have lots of spices in the cabinet that I can draw from if I need them. So for some characters, I will look at, the Meisner method. For some characters, I will look at Udo Hagen. For some characters, I'll look at Stanislavski. It all depends on what the approach that I take to the character depends on the character. They inform my decision on how I'm going to craft the character. Macbeth was close to method because we did this post-apocalyptic setting, which Macbeth lends itself very well to that because Macbeth is all about tribalism, really. And so I was fasting. I was only eating bread and drinking water. I was going hiking. We were doing this show during the summer. It was very hot outside. I was doing a lot of hikes in the heat, and I spent some time. Macbeth, if you're familiar with the show, he's an awful character. He's an awful person. Him and his wife are they're absolutely terrible and they're crazy. So I spent some time researching, looking at crime scene photos and wartime footage and just all kinds of things to kind of desensitize myself a little bit to because he's a soldier, he's a murderer, and he's and that show was very unpleasant. It was a great production. I'm proud of it. It's one of the few theatrical fight scenes that I actually do have a recording of, and
wow.
We're swinging around these 10-pound swords, and I will never do that character again because I didn't like him. I didn't like because when you're doing a theatrical show, you kind of, at least I do. I would imagine this is the case for other actors, but I can't speak for them. You live with that character for a time. It's not like you because the emotions and the feelings that you're drawing up, those are real, even though the events that are surrounding them are staged or pretend. The feelings are still very real, and once I draw up a feeling, I can't just like, oh, all right, I don't feel that anymore. So I did not like being Macbeth. I was very thankful when that show was over. I was very proud of it, but that one, I think it was probably my most challenging from like a mental and emotional standpoint. All of my film work has been about the same level of challenge. I think Kill Giggles probably takes precedent because it's the first feature that I've worked on that we shot the way we did. We shot for 19 consecutive days. We did it in 2 blocks. The first we took a few days off in between the middle, but 19 days of shooting over the course of a month and a half, and it was brutal. Waking up at 7-8 o'clock in the morning to get to film set by 9, and then filming for no less than 12 hours. There were a handful of days that maybe we were around an 8-hour day, but most of them were a minimum of 12 hours. A couple of them or more. Our final day was a 19-hour shoot. So Kill Giggles, from a work standpoint has definitely been the most challenging. Character-wise, a lot of the characters, and this is just a trend in independent film, a lot of writers and directors will cast or they will work on their project with specific people in mind for their roles, because when we're doing independent film, we get trained to write within our means, to write what we know we can do. So I think writers tend to default and write people they know into their scripts. So most of the characters that I've played on film have just been extensions of myself in one manner or another. Jason, wrote the character Tommy in Kill Giggles. He wrote him for me. Like Tommy sounds like I do when reading the script.
Okay. Yeah.
So and there were definitely challenges to approaching the character, mainly because I'm not a serial killer in real life. So getting in that headspace was presented a few challenges. But other than that, most of the film roles that I've done over the years have just been just sort of exaggerations of one aspect of my personality or another.
Right. Well, what would you say what's a couple of your most proud performances, maybe?
Theatrically, Sweeney Todd. Oh man, that's my favorite musical, and it's been my favorite since I was in high school. I got as a gift when I graduated. I got the original Broadway recording, and ever since then, I was hell bent on performing as Sweeney someday, and so I memorized those words and I worked on that, and then finally I got an opportunity to audition for it with Studio One in Burlington a number of years ago now, and again amazingly nervous, but I went, and sure enough, the directors were kind enough to offer me the role, and it's a blur really looking back on it. I want to do it again. I don't feel like I got quite enough out of it.
Right.
But that's definitely, Sondheim is a very complex composer. His music is difficult. And so anytime you're able to work with a group of people and work with a musical director on that kind of material and come out of it feeling like you did a good job, that's such a gratifying feeling. Film wise, I think playing young Jack in Between Hell and a Hard Place, that whole movie was just such an awesome experience. That's the first lead role I had in a film that Jason wrote and directed, and everything about that shoot was just perfect. My co-star Patrick Keenan, who also appears in Kill Giggles, is just a phenomenal performer, and Jason Buterin particularly has a really good ability to bring in just some of the best people. He just like a magnet. He just pulls them in. So just top to bottom, that production was just so much fun to work on. And really it was and we've joked about this because Jesse Knight was also involved in that one as well, who was our cinematographer and DP for Kill Giggles, and that was the one we think that changed things. We got together and we made this movie, and it turned out really good, and it got a lot of really good attention. It's won a lot of awards. It's played in a lot of festivals around the world now.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, like after that, we're like, okay, all right, we gotta keep stepping our game up. We gotta keep building, and so that's probably been a favorite there. I've been doing theater a long time, and I love it, and I have lots of roles that I've done over the years that I really enjoyed. I got to do a stage version of Dr. Horrible sing-along blog, which was great. And I did a really good show called Shipwrecked that was this really cool, immersive theater, practically a one-man show. I've done a couple of, I have done a one-man show that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I could talk about the theater that I've done for, we could just go on for hours.
Well, that's okay. I'm glad that you've gotten to do so many things, and I can see and feel your passion. Do you have certain actors that you, I don't know, can you name one or two that you study to improve yourself or help grow?
I have a handful that when I was younger, especially looked up to, and as I got older, would look into their careers and read more about them. Ian McKellen, an amazing Shakespearean actor. He most people in America know him from the X-Men movies and from Lord of the Rings, but he has just an incredible Shakespeare resume. Him and Patrick Stewart both. And they're both just fantastic people,
Mm-hmm.
Hugh Jackman, an amazing film actor and an amazing stage actor.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite film actors is Edward Norton, because he just movie to movie, he changes so much. You look at him, look at him in a movie like Death to Smoochie, and then look at him in like American History X. It's there. He has such a great ability to play like the polar opposite of every character he's played. Him and actors like Gary Oldman. Versatility. That's really what attracts me in terms of who the actors that I'm paying attention to. More recently, I've taken a really keen shine to James McAvoy. Another one with a really strong theatrical background. Liv Schreiber, another really good film performer and a theatrical performer. I'm also a big fan of Laura Linney. She has been doing stage work continuously for over 20 years and has appeared in a number of movies. That's another one. Like I could go on and on. There's so many
I know.
talented people out there. There's also directors that have made profound impacts. Like Ridley Scott's probably one of my favorite directors. I'm a big fan of Tarantino. His style of storytelling. We grew up watching the Spielberg movies, and I kind of blame those movies for my like sense of theatricality, because those movies are just so big,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, because I know you also teach and you have done directing. What has teaching done for you, or directing, either one?
Directing is fun because, and I don't know if other directors do this or not, but I tend to cast myself in all the roles beforehand. And I always tell my casts that I'm the kind of director that I would want as an actor. I'm an actor's director. When we get to talking about sets and costumes and props and lighting, I love to delegate. I love to be like, okay, you think you can handle that? Then go right ahead. Theater and film are both, it's easy for individuals, especially when they're passionate about it, to feel like they have to wear all the hats. And I love the communal aspect of it. I am not an island. I like to be able to surround myself with people and work with people. But the directing is definitely taught me how to engage in active listening better, to listening to my cast, listening to the actors, and it has definitely helped me to appreciate the communal aspect of putting a show together or putting a film together. Teaching is very rewarding. I started doing workshops years ago. There's a theater here in Burlington called Studio One that when they started up, that's all they did. It was acting lessons, choir, I think, choral lessons was their first big thing. And then they had a space and they started inviting some local performers to come in and teach workshops and classes and things. And I particularly got pulled into doing youth classes. And I like working with the high school age group, because I think that is the time when they are starting to cultivate their what they want to do once they get out of high school. And so that's the time that they really need to be, thinking about the work that goes into theatrical performance or film performance. One of the philosophies that I adhere to as an actor is based on a section of a book called The Actor at Work by Robert Benedetti. And he has this philosophy that actors, when we are performing in the moment, we have to physically, emotionally, and mentally exist all at the same time. When we are kids, that is easy for us. The people joke about how kids don't have a filter, right?
Right.
When we hit adolescence, something happens, probably puberty, that causes us to disintegrate. We start to ignore our intellect sometimes, or we start to distance ourselves from our feelings, or we just completely let our bodies go to waste. We don't do the things we don't drink enough water. We don't go to sleep right. We don't eat right. And that happens in adolescence. That happens when you're a teenager. So I think I particularly enjoy working with that age group to make them aware of it, because if they can stop it, I think it will make them better actors down the road. Because when you're an actor, you have to reintegrate yourself. You have to be able to physically express and exist while also tapping into your emotional reservoir and your mental abilities all at the same time on stage or in front of the cameras. So if they can be made aware of it at the right time, then I feel like they have a better chance of stopping it and keeping themselves in that integrated way, which will serve them down the road. I do a lot of acting lessons in Zoom now because of the way of the world. And it's given me a really good opportunity to kind of pause and really think about the structure of my lessons and talk to my students about their goals and making sure that everything is goal oriented. So teaching and directing have both afforded me a lot of work in active listening and collaboration and the importance of healthy communication.
Right, absolutely. It sounds like you still want to do, I'm assuming you want to pursue more acting versus directing, or do you still want to do both? Or?
I mean, I'm never satisfied, Tamara. I do want to do both. I have lots of stories that I want to tell. I'm a writer too. I've got scripts, and some of those I would like to direct, and some of them I'd like to hand off to other people. I will hope I never have to stop acting. I don't know that if I had to choose between the two, I probably would choose acting. Just because I feel that I get the most emotional reward out of that.
Right.
But I have a passion for both, and I will continue to make moves to do both for as long as I can.
Good. Well, do you have a dream role that you'd like to
in theater, yes. I've always wanted to play Seymour Krelborn from Little Shop of Horrors. That's probably the first Broadway musical that I ever saw. We had it on VHS when I was a kid. The Rick Moranis film version, which an amazing film musical. Probably the best film musical we have, with how good that puppet, the plant puppet, is. Audrey too. I was always told, because I'm a big guy, and I was always told that I probably don't look the part of Seymour Krelborn. It's actually funny because I have to wear glasses now and I'm at the computer. I definitely look a little bit nerdier. But I was always told that I don't fit the physical archetype that role typically requires, and I think that's a load of crap, and I don't adhere to that kind of casting. So that's one of my dream roles as far as the musicals go. Is I would really like to play Seymour at some point. Film wise, I'm a big nerd at heart. I play a lot of D&D. I like science fiction. And I'm a big Star Wars fan. and the fact that we are continuing to get like lots of Star Wars content, you know, the second season of The Mandalorian's coming out, fills me with hope that someday I will get to be in something Star Wars. I got to be fortunate enough to be in a Star Wars fan film with Jason Buterin, actually, and several other North Carolina film professionals, put together by a really talented director and cinematographer named Justin Wright. And we did a Star Wars fan film for a festival competition, and we made it into the top 25, which was very gratifying, out of like hundreds of submissions. But yeah, so that's a dream. That's a dream role, is just somewhere in the Star Wars universe. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be. Well, I want you to have a chance to talk about your upcoming feature film, Kill Giggles, and talk about that and share a little bit about that so people know what it's about and when they can see it.
Well, Kill Giggles is a thriller love story, is what Jason would describe it as, about a troubled young man named Tommy DeSantos who suffers from really terrible coulrophobia, fear of clowns, to the point where when he sees them, he actually sees them as monsters. He doesn't see them as people, literally. And as one of my favorite lines in the movie at the beginning there is, you're supposed to kill monsters. That's what all the best stories are about. And so he has this crusade where he has to rid the world of clowns. And then he meets a woman that he falls in love with, and that complicates things. And it gets a little. I don't want to give any more away than that. I can't speak on the details, but I can say that we have been picked up for distribution by a fairly large studio, and that deal is still in the legal process. There's a lot of T's to dot and I's to cross, as Jason would say. But it will be available in stores. It will be available streaming. I just don't have those specifics. But as soon as I do, you'll be among the first to find out. It is screening, though. We are in one of the cool things about the contract we worked out is we got to retain our festival rights. So it is screening. We were actually supposed to have a drive-in screening this weekend, but unfortunately the rain has canceled that.
When you say, let me interrupt you. When you say screening, what does that mean?
The movie will be showing. It'll be playing at a film festival.
So, but I mean, it's already doing that, you're saying, or? So
it premiered at Genre Blast in Virginia last month.
Okay.
Last month. That's the only place it has screened currently.
Okay.
Up to date. It was supposed to play this weekend at a drive-in out in Salisbury, North Carolina, but unfortunately the weather has forced them to postpone that. But it will be playing on October 22nd in Winston-Salem.
Oh, awesome.
Marketplace Cinema as a part of the Wreak Havoc Film Festival.
Is that outdoors?
Yes, I believe so. I think that their drive-in it's in the parking lot is what they've been doing. I don't know how for certain, but I know that if you check out Marketplace Cinema online, they've got all the details there. You can also check out the Wreak Havoc website, wreakhavocfilmfestival.com. They've got a ton of useful information on there. But that is screening October 22nd as a part of the Wreak Havoc Film Festival. Those guys are absolutely awesome. We've screened multiple times with them in the past. But yeah, hopefully, knock on wood, all of the weather will hold out for that. But hopefully the legal side, the legalese will be translated completely in the next coming weeks, and we'll be able to make an official announcement about our distribution deal. And that will open the doors for more people to be able to see it worldwide. But if you're in North Carolina, if you're within driving distance, head out to Winston-Salem on October 22nd. There's going to be a lot of other really great North Carolina-made films screening. I always love to push people to support independent film and support local artists. North Carolina has an amazingly vibrant independent film community with just some of the best, most dedicated, talented people that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And a lot of those people will be, their work will be showing at the Recabic Film Festival.
What time can they see it in Winston?
It's the last screening on that night, so it will probably be later, probably 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And it'll be playing after a series of other movies. But you can get all of those details from recabicfilmfestival.com.
Okay. Well, you need to send me that link too, just so I don't forget. And they can also see the trailer on killgiggles.com, right?
Mm-hmm. On killgiggles.com. We're also on Facebook. Kill Giggles. What is it? Facebook. I think it's just facebook.com/killgiggles.
Yeah.
And we're on Instagram as well. We have been doing our diligence to post frequently. This year's been weird.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. One good thing, silver lining, we were supposed to screen Kill Giggles at the Crimson Screen Horror Film Festival in May, and obviously that didn't happen. With all of the lockdowns and stay-at-home orders that started going into place through April. But as a result of not being able to screen it then, that's actually how we were able to secure the distribution deal that we did. If we had screened when we were supposed to, it's likely that we would not have gotten the distribution deal, because distributors tend to not want to pick up movies that have already been seen by lots of people.
Okay.
It makes sense from a business standpoint. But since it hadn't been released, and since it wasn't going to be screened anywhere else for a time, they felt comfortable in securing the rights, and they were hoping to. I think their goal was to time it around Halloween for the release. So that's the silver lining,
Okay, cool. Well, I want to keep that date in mind then too, to share on social media, the October 22nd.
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
Yeah, send me that so I don't forget. Does Jason talk about a sequel to this or more Kill Giggles?
We maybe. Mystery is a great advertiser, right? It's possible. Jason is one of the most creative people that I know. So even thinking about the way our film ends in the most even if I choose to think about it in the most finite sense, he's still clever enough to. I'm sure he could turn it. He could pull a sequel out. I've got my own ideas for a sequel, so once it's released and once it gets out there and we start talking about the next big project, we'll revisit and see what we land on.
Well, that sounds great, because I do want to see it. I really do. Where do you, as far as acting, what do you have somewhere an area you want to focus on for the years ahead, or?
I really want to do a romantic comedy.
Okay.
And I would really like to do I love drama.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I keep using the word, but there's that catharsis that comes from really investing in it. So my personal focus has just been to continue to skill build and continue to work on the things that the tools that I currently have in the closet. Everything's kind of up in the air right now. A lot of my contracts are on suspension, and it's going to be a while before we're safely able to perform in theaters again. So this downtime, this unavoidable downtime, really I have been trying to use it and focus in on skill building and cultivating ideas and writing. I'm doing a lot of writing.
I was going to say writing is good to do during this time.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're okay to stay in North Carolina for a while, and you're right. There are a lot of talented people in North Carolina.
Yeah, we did get our film incentives back. So that will once COVID-19 has blown over, we will hopefully see a good return in the professional film industry as well. Before we lost our film incentives, Wilmington was the third largest film city in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
And there were lots of contracts, lots of movies and TV shows that were filming down there. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully once all this pandemic stuff blows over, we'll see a return in that regard. We did have last fall, I believe, the 2 new Halloween movies were filming down there. Halloween Kills, and I can't think of the subtitle of the second one, but
Halloween, the Halloween.
With Jamie Lee Curtis as well.
Jamie Lee, she'll be in those too. Okay. I didn't know they were going to keep continuing that, but he never dies. So.
No, he never dies. No, the good ones never do. The good ones never do.
Wasn't his name Michael?
It was. Yeah. What are you doing, Michael?
Okay. So it sounds like you're okay in North Carolina now. I think
for the time being, yeah. I would like to eventually maybe be someplace that has more professional theater opportunities. The only places in North Carolina where really that happens, you have like Raleigh and Charlotte, but even then, a lot of the professional theaters bring in tours. They don't necessarily use residents for things. Winston-Salem also has a bit, but because live theater isn't going to be a thing for a little while, I'm trying not to focus too much on that.
Will they not do any of that in Tanger Center? Will that not be, or is that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I was hoping that would bring a lot here, So
that's always the hope. This year has really just messed up everything.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's going to end. We have to think positive.
Yeah, for sure.
And good things, like you said, will come out of it, I believe. So I really want to thank you for being here today, Michael. I could keep you here all day. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm so glad that we finally got this scheduled. And is there anything else you want to mention that we didn't talk about or announce?
So in the downtime that we've all been experiencing over the last several months, I have reignited my love of Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm actually fortunate enough to be a part of a group that we live stream a game every Wednesday on Twitch TV. So I will send you the link to the page that we live stream from. And that's been a lot of fun because it is actually, and people who are familiar with the game may know this, but people who aren't probably don't. It's an excellent creative outlet. I have been able to spend lots of time writing and talking to the people that I'm playing the game with to come up with cool character arcs and character hooks and story ideas. So it's really been kind of a therapeutic, creative tool. And the stream is fun. Several of the people on the stream are also North Carolina actors, Tom Gore and Angela Pritchett. My wife Meg is one of the players as well. So kind of a different sort of performance art, but it's still fun nonetheless.
That's amazing. I haven't heard about when I was in college at UNCG, Dungeons and Dragons was really big. I knew a lot. I didn't know it was still around, and I never knew anything about it.
It's still a big thing, and with the advent of streaming, with applications like Twitch, there's lots of people who play and lots of people who stream, and we play online. We have there's an interface, a program that we use on the computer, and we play. All of us get on Zoom, and we stream it, and it's a lot of fun. I'll send you a link to the page.
Yeah, I do. And I'll put it in that Facebook page too. Sweet. So I want to thank the viewers for their continued support. Thank you for being here today and supporting Michael. And please share the replay of this video. It'll be on YouTube. It's also going to remain on Facebook. It's on Twitter and several of my Facebook pages, my personal page. And so just share this so that I can continue to celebrate Michael and all his beautiful talent. He's on Facebook and Instagram as the Michael Ray Williams, and I'll have those links under the YouTube video when I can get into the editing, and I'll have all that on there as well. So join me next Friday for another local talented person in Greensboro, North Carolina, singer Evan Gibson, who has a lot of exciting things going on right now as well. So to your own success, keep on living and just keep on rocking it, and take care.